Hey all, your OS reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the Sam & Johnny HM12s. These are a pair of wireless buds that resembles a pair of IEMs or in-ear monitors that artists would wear from afar, offering just a bit more customization and a slightly more snug fit as well. In fact, although these are now available to purchase directly from their website, they were actually initially released through Kickstarter a couple of months back and offered some unique customization options, including engraving your own name onto the front, in addition to choosing between a variety of colors. And it is using Bluetooth 5.2, supports Qualcomm aptX audio codec, crafted out of resin, so they can mix and create very interesting looking shades for the colors. So this brand, I would argue, is an alternative to something like Moondrop. They are more specialized in hi-fi headphones and equipment, but they're now branching out into more of these wireless pairs. Really does resemble jewelry from afar compared to the generic black or white headphones that we often see. Now, by the way, there are a couple of different configuration models that were available as part of their campaign. For instance, some of their base versions, called the HM10, only has a single dynamic driver and retails for only $70, compared to our model here is a little bit more deluxe, around $100, upgrades to dual drivers, so there's a dynamic plus a balanced armature inside, packing in a little bit more detail. So technically, again, two speakers, one is responsible for bass, one is responsible for trebles, should provide you with a little bit more nuanced sound. And then you can, again, pay a little bit more if you want the customized color and engraving, and there are 8 different fonts that you can pick between, and they even have a more deluxe version that is specifically catered at audiophiles, people that want the absolute best sound possible and are willing to pay a pretty penny to get that. Again, this is not the model that we're reviewing here, which is around $100, but there is technically an HM Pro, which is probably more appropriate for artists and professionals, but this one has 6 balanced armatures inside, aka 6 speakers stacked into one. But coming back to our HM12s, which are kind of middle of the line, they have a pretty good battery endurance, with the casing up to 200 hours of listening time before you have to recharge the case again, although the buds themselves will give you around 7 hours or so of continuous music listening, the case giving you some extra top-ups. But again, that 200-hour combined makes it an endurance champion and one of the longest lasting battery cases that I've seen. So if you are away from an outlet for longer stretches of time, it should still be pretty good. Final specs here include IPX6 water resistance rating, so if you're sweating or raining outside, it should still survive. And in terms of control scheme, you can double tap to raise the volume higher or lower, or a single tap to play and pause music. Relatively lightweight at under 5 grams a piece, and they can be used in either mono or stereo modes. So our version here is going to be the green variant, hybrid series with dynamic armature, pretty well presented as you can tell here, and the battery case is crafted out of aluminum alloy, sitting on a layer of foam, and then underneath here we have just a quick user guide documenting how to set it up and wear them properly. And then down below here you also get a carrying pouch, which is branded by Sam & Johnny, which further contains 2 other sets of silicone tips to get a more snug fit, and also a standard USB Type-C cable for charging. Closer look at the battery case, it feels very premium because of the all-metal build with some chamfered edges. It's a far cry versus the majority of other wireless buds, which are using plastic instead. Now, the 200-hour endurance of the battery case does make it a touch thicker compared to something closer to AirPods, but overall it still is not bad. You can put it into a larger pocket or backpack without too many issues, and then just a Type-C port for charging on the edge. There's also 2 status LEDs in the front that tells you the battery percentage, and then when you pop them open, they will automatically start to pair with your device. The hinge also locks itself into place and doesn't really fall loose. So build quality of the hardware does feel very good. Some simple specs here, and again, we have the green version, which is engraved with our custom OS reviews on top. And this colorway really reminds me of something like jade. The resin here is super alluring, and then on the back they are technically transparent, so you can see inside. Check out the drivers, as well as the small battery and components crammed in there, plus the ergonomic shape of these wireless IEMs make them just a bit more form-fitting. As you are moving around, jogging, they will still stay in place without any obvious stem on the outside. But there still is a microphone built on in if you want to answer some phone calls. That being said, these particular buds do not have active noise cancellation. So if you're in a noisier space or environment, it is relying completely on the silicone tips, the passive isolation to block out sound. On one hand, ANC is a feature that we're starting to see more and more commonly across wireless buds, but on the the other hand, these are all about the audio quality, just for listening to music being the main selling points, as opposed to being the most well-rounded pair of buds. For example, aside from missing ANC, you also won't find a companion app either. In some ways, that is expected from a more legacy hi-fi brand making these IEMs, but again, in an increasingly competitive world of wireless buds, it is a curious admission. They're definitely a bit niche and specialized, but again, if sound and aesthetics are your main priorities, in addition to having really long battery life, then it might still be worth possibly considering. Even the mesh that is covering up the drivers here are also crafted out of metal, as you can tell, with some gold accents running across it. If you are a fan of the kind of translucent tech design, I do think you'll like the way that these buds look overall. Pretty cool. And here's one more close-up shot, really at the text details. And just as reference, here's a final look at all the different color variety options, including a quote-unquote colorful blind box, which is mixing the resin colors from all the other versions together into this rainbow shade. And here are the different 8 fonts if you're picking a custom engraving. So you can choose any name or character and then choose one of those fonts to write it in. By default though, the base model will just be saying Sam and Johnny and font style 1. And to their credit, it does feel like a very curated, specialized process, because when you submit an order, you can also choose between some examples of how your font will look like, as well as a sketch or preview of the end result during that customization process. So you do get a sense of that artesian, kind of handcrafted nature, making it feel like something that is one of a kind and unique compared to something which is mass-produced in a factory. But subsequently, you are paying a little bit more for that handcrafted aspect in addition to, again, the aesthetics, as opposed to them being the most feature-rich. And so with the stage being set, luckily the performance in terms of audio quality does not disappoint. In my testing, I did find them to be extremely nuanced. Thanks to the dual drivers, bass had sufficient kick when you're listening to rock music, EDM, a drum beat. It sounds satisfying without overpowering the instrumentals or vocals. And speaking of, the trebles also sounded crisp and clean, plenty of details there as well without sounding too thin or shrill thanks to that dedicated second driver, resulting in a very good listening experience across the board, really regardless of genre that I tried, from acoustic to more studio style albums. And at the same time, they felt super comfortable, as expected, because of the kind of custom molding ergonomics going on. Even when I was kind of shaking my head, doing some light jogging or running around, they still stayed in place. And the passive noise isolation was not bad because of how snug they were, although the style of tip that you choose is going to be quite important here because it's all you have to rely on, and all 3 pairs are crafted out of rubber or silicone as opposed to being something like Comply foam tips, which can perhaps block out even more sound. You can always pick up those yourself, but it doesn't come included as part of the kit. And since these are targeted towards audiophiles and hi-fi enthusiasts, I do think perhaps foam tips included in the box would have been a nice touch, but it is what it is. When it came to the audio chip, again, they are using aptX or SBC and AAC standard Bluetooth, depending on what your device supports. And I think aptX is doing a pretty good job. Maybe it's a slight step down compared to LDAC, but when paired with good quality audio recordings, I was still able to enjoy the music and all of nuances that sometimes gets masked or lost if wearing less expensive headphones. So not bad here, and there's not too much distortion or static in the background either. The transmission felt pretty stable, even as I was walking a little bit further from the phone, around 10 meters or 33 feet away. It didn't really get any interruptions, so it was a clean transmission, didn't have any hints of too much static hissing in the background either, and the capacitive touch sensors also felt pretty responsive. Luckily, since there is no companion app, everything that you want to control, including volume in addition to play pause, can all be done on here, but again, they're not remappable since there is no additional software component. As for the built-in microphones, I would say on here they are just around average. I would rate them maybe 7 or 8 out of 10. They do have a little bit of background noise reduction, so if you are in a slightly busier cafe, it sounds okay. But because of the IEM design, the microphones are going to be a lot further away from your mouth compared to a stem design, such as with Apple's AirPods, that also have even more microphones built in for more advanced noise cancellation. So these are not bad, particularly if you're in a more indoor, quiet space. You can definitely still make calls with them, but I would say music quality is definitely the main selling point and clearly the area that they prioritized with a design like these. So that is more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the Sam and Johnny HM12, as $100 wireless buds, sound quality is already excellent, in fact one of the best in its price category. However, it comes at the compromise of many other aspects, including, again, not as much of a software support, also missing active noise cancellation. Pretty much all of the resources here were spent on just making the sound as good as possible, and also the design just look and feel a bit more customized. That being said, if you're okay with some of those shortcomings, the hardware is indeed excellent in terms of the build and construction. In other words, if you like the way that they look, the sound quality also luckily doesn't disappoint. I can only imagine how impressive the 6-driver pairs sound, but honestly, I think these are already a pretty good balancing point without really breaking the bank. So you can check out more details if interested in the links down below. Definitely a bit more of a niche model, I would say, but quite cool in their design, I have to admit. Almost analog feeling in a way. Sam and Johnny HM12 wireless buds.